They used to call me Crazy Joe, well, now they can call me Batman.
Good morning. Welcome back to Crazy Joe's Concession Stand. I'm Crazy Joe, and I thought we'd talk Star Wars today. We're doing the Dog Days of Podcasting, podcasts a day for the entire month of August. If you're not familiar with the Dog Days of Podcasting, go to dogdaysofpodcasting.com. There you can find the mega feed where a bunch of other podcasters are taking part in this, and there is a little bit of crossover where we kind of comment on what each other is doing, what each other is saying. So you do get a more enriching experience if you listen to the mega feed. So go check it out, dogdaysofpodcasting.com. But I've been talking about the movies as I usually do on this Dog Days of Podcasting. And Star Wars hasn't really come up yet. And Star Wars is obviously, for many of us, one of our, especially my generation, one of our first major movie experiences. You know, when you think movies and you're of Generation X, Star Wars is one of the biggies. And we really haven't hit on Star Wars yet. And there's something that I will die on this hill, man. I will die on this hill. And you know why I will die on this hill? Because I'm right. I am. Seriously. And I'm going to back it up. The new trilogy, the sequel trilogy, came out from Disney a couple of years ago. A lot of people online have, crapped all over it. I still maintain that it's far better than anything George Lucas put out in the 90s or 2000s. And I'll stand by that. George Lucas, I always say online, Disney and Kathleen Kennedy have given us more good, high-quality Star Wars than George Lucas ever did. I say that all the time. And man, will I stand by that. Because George Lucas gave us three great Star Wars movies. Three great Star Wars movies. He gave us the original trilogy. But then we got the special editions, we got the prequels, and if you are of my generation, if you were there, people did not like those prequels. People complained incessantly. There was a whole documentary called The People versus George Lucas, just bitching about how much they hated the prequels. Then suddenly Disney puts out the sequel trilogy, and there's this sudden revisionist history where people are like, oh my God, George Lucas was so great and Disney has ruined this. No, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Every single film Disney has put out for Star Wars, every TV show Disney has put out for Star Wars has been better than what George Lucas gave us with those prequels. Those prequels were just awful. And Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is often considered the best of the prequels, and I agree. It's by far the best of the prequels. In fact, I just went to the movies to see it in April because they brought it back in honor of its 20th anniversary. And it's by far and away the best of the prequels. Well, the worst movie Disney made for Star Wars, the worst one, is easily Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I don't think there's any disagreement. I think everyone agrees that's the worst Star Wars movie that Disney put out. But I will maintain to my dying breath that Rise of Skywalker, and I don't love Rise of Skywalker. I'm not some huge Rise of Skywalker fanboy. No. Rise of Skywalker's got problems. But I will die on this hill. Rise of Skywalker, the worst Disney Star Wars movie, is still better than the best of the prequels. And I'm fresh from seeing Revenge of the Sith in April on the big screen. Rise of Skywalker is just better. The pacing is better. The dialogue is better. It feels more like Star Wars. Now, guess what? There is a line of dialogue in The Rise of Skywalker that I have done a previous video on. I did a video on this line of dialogue before, but the internet has adopted this line of dialogue as the mascot for all bad dialogue in movies. If you talk bad dialogue in movies, the internet brings up one line from The Rise of Skywalker and carries it on its shoulders as the champion of bad movie dialogue. And I put out a video explaining that not only is it not bad movie dialogue, it's actually good dialogue. It's good dialogue because for the context of the scene, the character saying it makes sense. It's what a real person would say in that scene. And I've told people, if you disagree with me, Tell me why I'm wrong, but be able to back yourself up, because I can back up why I say it's good dialogue. If you're going to tell me it's bad dialogue, you need to back it up. And to this day, and that video came up 3 years ago, I put that video out. Nobody has been able to refute me. The line of dialogue is Poe Dameron at the beginning of The Rise of Skywalker tells the resistance, somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow Palpatine returned. And everyone is like, oh my God, somehow Palpatine returned. What a horrible line of dialogue. Well, it's not. It's not. It's good dialogue. It's logical dialogue. It's dialogue that makes sense. Why? Who says the line? Poe Dameron. Poe Dameron. Who is Poe Dameron? Poe Dameron is a resistance fighter pilot. He is not force sensitive. He's not a Jedi. He's not some kind of person who's tied into the force. Now, if you know how Palpatine came back from the dead, because Palpatine was dead. We all saw Palpatine die in Return of the Jedi. How did he come back? He used dark force magic. He used cloning. He used what's the line he says in the movie? There are some powers in the dark side of the force that seem unnatural. It was basically tapping into the dark side of the force and cloning and things that the average normal person, the average guy, wouldn't be able to do. This is something he was able to do using dark force powers. Now, if you take a guy like Poe Dameron, who is not force sensitive, he's not a Jedi, and the thing I keep getting is, well, that didn't explain it. That didn't explain how Palpatine returned. Okay. Why would Poe Dameron explain how he returned? Why? Why would this low-level resistance fighter pilot with no knowledge of the Force have a detailed step-by-step explanation as to how a dark Sith Lord managed to beat death? Why would that guy know how he did it? I mean, he wouldn't. Plain and simple, he wouldn't. Now imagine you or me turn on the news one day and we see that Hitler's back. Hitler's just back. You going to know how? Am I going to know how? No. That doesn't happen. That's unnatural. It's something that people don't come back from the dead. So if I turn on the news tomorrow and see that Hitler's back, that's weird. And my wife's going to walk in the room and go, what are you watching on the news? I'm going to say, somehow Hitler came back. I'm not going to know how he did it. I'm going to have no idea how he did it. How did a dead man come back from the dead? I don't know. Why would I know? Why would Poe Dameron know? So that character, in that context, finds out that a dead, evil dictator from the past has been restored to life, but he's not going to know how it happened. He would never know how it happened. And if people say to him, what happened? Palpatine returned. How'd that happen? Hell if I know. Guy was dead. How'd he come back? Why would Poe know that? He would not. And that is why it is good dialogue. Now, when I tell people, and this has been 2 years now or more, I don't remember exactly, but for over like 2 years, I've been telling people, if you don't agree with me, back it up. Tell me why I'm wrong. And the problem is, people cannot argue a coherent point as to why I'm wrong. Every time they try, they end up moving the goalposts and making a different argument. Not the argument that they set out to make. Because the argument I'm asking you is, tell me why somehow Palpatine returned is bad dialogue. That is the question. Because that's what the internet says. The internet says somehow Palpatine returned is bad dialogue. Okay. Tell me why it's bad dialogue. Now, here's some of the answers I got. Well, it doesn't make sense because we saw him die. All right. You didn't argue why it's bad dialogue. What you did was you told me you didn't like that plot point. Okay? If you're saying they shouldn't have brought Palpatine back because we saw him die, you're not arguing the dialogue. You're arguing that I didn't care for the plot point that they brought Palpatine back. That's not the argument we're having. If your argument is you didn't like the story, that's a different argument. We're talking dialogue. And I've had people move the goalposts and try to argue that Palpatine should have never come back. You're not arguing the point. You're arguing a different point. Your point is, I didn't like the story, not I didn't like the dialogue. I've had people say to me, well, it's bad dialogue because it doesn't explain it. Okay. Again, you're moving the goalposts because that's not what we're talking about. This isn't a explanation. This is something a character said based on the knowledge that character would have had. If Poe Dameron had given an explanation as to how Palpatine returned from the dead, that would have been bad dialogue because he would not have known that. His character would have had no way of knowing that. Somebody else said to me, well, it's bad dialogue because nowhere else in the movie did they explain it. Again, you're moving the goalposts. This has nothing to do with that line of dialogue. You're talking about something that you would have liked in another part of the movie that wasn't there. That has nothing to do with this line of dialogue. This line of dialogue is one line of dialogue spoken by one person based on the knowledge that character would have had. And as such, it is perfectly fine dialogue. There is not a thing wrong with that dialogue. If you're going to argue it's bad dialogue, tell me why it is bad dialogue that character would have said that thing at that time based on the knowledge that character has. If your whole argument is they shouldn't have brought Palpatine back, you're arguing a different point. If your argument is nowhere in the movie do we get a coherent explanation, by the way, I don't agree with that at all. I think the movie told you flat out. There's an old thing they say show don't tell. They say if you have to spell things out for people, that's bad. You know, sometimes you give people what they need and you assume they're smart enough to put it together. And I do believe Rise of Skywalker did that because we saw pieces of Snoke. We saw pieces of Snoke in a container on Exegol, which indicates that Snoke was a clone that was put together by Palpatine. And when we see these pieces of Snoke floating in a canister, Palpatine says there are some powers that people would consider to be unnatural. I believe that because I, in the audience, put 2 and 2 together. It was cloning and force magic. I put it together. They didn't spell it out. They didn't say the words, but they showed me enough that I was able to infer that. And I believe some of the books later on spelled it out for you. And people have said, well, you didn't put it in the movie. You put it in a book. Okay. They didn't spell it out in the movie, but I do believe the movie gave you enough context that knowing what we know about the Star Wars universe, it was pretty easy to put together. So I do disagree that they don't tell you in the movie. I think they made it fairly clear in the movie. But even so, even if it wasn't clear, that still has nothing to do with this line of dialogue spoken by one character at one moment in the movie. All right, I'm going to end it there. Somehow Palpatine returned, and you know what? That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have a problem with the fact Palpatine was in the movie, then your issue was with the plot, not with the dialogue. All right, I'll talk to you later. Keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas
with the plastic feet.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
Tell everyone you meet.
Keep wearing those pajamas
With the back door flap.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
Don't open it, it's a trap.
Oh no,
It's a trap. Some people call them PJs. Some people call them
jammies.
They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander adamas. But no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
I know we're having fun.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
And now the song is done.